This is Smile Business Diary, a DSD podcast. Hello, Dr. Michael Katsaros. How are you today?
I'm doing well, very well. Excited to be here and honored, absolutely, to be asked to do this. This is wonderful.
Oh my goodness. I mean, I can say the same. I'm really excited to hear from you because you've set yourself up, with such a great office and dynamic in what you do today. I want to start off by allowing you to share, who you are as a person and what your practice is like today, if you could do that for us.
Sure. Well, I have to say, who I am as a person is, how much time do you have, right? I can certainly go on and on. That's something that I'm very capable of. Let me try to explain to you how I've come to be. One of those things is that I was told early on by a wonderful and respected relative to always pursue opportunities and see them through and make sure that you don't close those doors and keep the doors open, even if the situation is at the time potentially not great or even adversarial. Give the benefit of the doubt. And so, but it's something that I think at 18 years old when I was going to college still holds true to me, and it's a very valuable lesson that I try to pass on to others. So how did we become successful? And I think success is measured in important uh, a lot of important measures of success. But our practice is very successful, and it basically serendipitously life has a lot there's a lot of luck, and a lot of pursuit and drive and recognizing what's good and trying to feed through what's not. I found good consultants, whether it's friends or colleagues or mentors, that I'd have dialogue with, which led me to my now retired partner in 2010 and early on when my youngest was recently born, and it seemed like it was time to make a change. I'd always had interest in the business side of dentistry, and I had spent a lot of time in the early stages of my career recognizing that um, dentistry is something that we need to hone our skills for and get really good at. And when you feel as though, and everybody can interpret their own measure of what proficiency is, but when I felt proficient, I realized there was so much more. And so I pursued different avenues of education to get better and more qualified. I wanted to become a practitioner who was less conventional. Using conventional techniques is a really important part of standard of care and doing good for your patients. But at the same time, there is so much more, and growing and learning is something that takes time to understand the value in. I can tell you that I thought I was, after 4 or 5 years, doing a great job. And then I learned from others that I needed to learn so much more. So that took me down a path that led to other relationships and eventually being connected on a telephone when I was looking for my own practice with my now retired partner, who was extremely impressive from the get-go and had started a legacy style practice in 1974 in downtown Washington, D.C., when nobody was in downtown Washington, D.C. And it was a much different um, environment. It's now, his vision was that it's going to develop, and over time, it would be beneficial to be a Washington dentist when nobody was in Washington, D.C. And he was right. And so his vision, being approximately 30 years ahead of me, a full generation, was appealing, and his style was contagious. And while we're not the same people, we still try to be true to that legacy and vision. Of course, myself and my current partners are in my generation, and so we have different ways that we feel confident in moving that legacy forward. But at the same time, we have to give credit to those that got us to where we are. So for me, I can certainly tell you all of my accolades, but I think that the growth aspect is we are here because others have influenced us, and hopefully we've paid attention, and that level of authenticity to the objective, to the goal, to the vision of dentistry is the key to success. And always looking back and saying, are we doing what we set out to do with our vision?
Yeah, absolutely. And if I recall, just some fun facts about your office. I mean, you're like in the central business district of Washington, D.C., right? Like right around the corner from the
Yeah.
White House. Right.
Yeah, we are. It's very common and normal for us, but Washington, the White House is 2 blocks away. And so if you go for a walk, you're there, and it's, sometimes seems like the center of the universe, and other times it's routine. But we are very grateful, very privileged to be on K Street, and the Washingtonians that come to see us are part of that ecosystem. And what's wonderful about all of them is they value their health and wellness, and they see us as their doctor, their consultant. They confide in us their owners' insecurities, and they allow us the opportunity to diagnose and coach them along to become um, more healthy, but on their terms. So Washington is a breath of fresh air to be in. I came from the New York, New Jersey location. I'm originally from Pennsylvania, but that's another story. Getting to Washington was something I was attracted to based on previous experiences in Washington, D.C., actually getting married in Bethesda, Maryland, and my wife being from the area. It was always a place I had fond memories of. It's a beautiful city. The buildings cannot be built any taller than a Washington Monument, so there's a lot of light. So even though it's urban, it's also very neighborhood, uh, and walkable. So it's a fun city, lots of restaurants and lots of people. And I love people, so it's helpful.
So take me through the process of how your office was developed, because it sounds like you met someone who already had an idea to go there, or was it already established and then you bought over the practice? How did that
Yes,
progress?
it was. That's a good question. Um, well, the idea, it was first a solo practice, and there were some partners or relationships that came and went as relationships happen with. As it grew, it became clear to my partner that it wasn't about an individual, and that he had that intuition to recognize, probably in the 90s, that it was important to develop brand. And the brand is how you can carry legacy, because individuals can come and go. And so to find the right people to plug into the brand is the critical part of the longevity of a business. At least that's what we believe. So he changed the LLC from his name to the Washington Center for Dentistry. And once that happened, and very early marketing and early website that started in the 90s that has been with Google for 25 years, and careful marketing, but also recognizing that the best referral source and the best relationships develop from the relationships that you have with your patients. And the measure of success is often how that relationship with another person builds into other relationships. So it's, the common thing now is to do a lot of marketing, which we certainly do our fair share of marketing, but you can recognize how patients have a different perspective or different perception, or are more sticky to the brand and the legacy and the culture of our practice when they're coming from other people that share in that value.
Hello, I'm just taking a quick break from this podcast interview to tell you how you can get started with DSD. If there was anything that our guest has mentioned that strikes a chord with you, or you are curious about becoming a DSD clinic, I encourage you to book a call with me. This is a 30-minute, no-obligation information sharing session in which I can answer your questions about DSD and discuss your options based on your unique circumstances. The link to schedule a call with me can be found in the notes on this episode. Now, back to the interview.
And I think from my perspective, because I was an outsider looking in for a while, as a new associate before coming partner, I could recognize that no matter how many patients were in the practice, which isn't very many, the partners that were there for a long time knew the names of their patients. And if I was seeing one when they weren't there, I would say, I saw so-and-so today. And they say, oh yeah, tell me what's going on. And I was like, wow, I got to step up my game, because I was a dentist,
Right.
and I was trained to be a dentist, and my heritage and my immigrant family that came here to give me this fantastic opportunity to be successful. I'm successful because I was encouraged and put in the right positions. And I of course I bought into that concept and pursued it. But at the same time, it got me to a place where now I'm the dentist, and now I'm working on my skills, and now I'm working on my cases and my situations and healing. But it was more than recognizing that diagnosis and treatment planning and telling patients what they need doesn't work very well if the basic principles of trust and relationship haven't been established. And sometimes that makes it's a lot easier with the patient who's been referred. So, of course, establishing a brand, being in an amazing location like Washington, D.C., and with patients that are health focused and want to maintain health in their teeth and their the relationship with the oral systemic component, they're very much they connect with sometimes more than some of the practitioners that I worked with. But that is I think one of the key of the secret sauce is recognizing the community, and then also, my golly, our team. One thing that I will tell you that when I always have team meetings and we get to discuss our successes or what we can learn from, there was always an emphasis on the value of the team and their relationships.
Yeah.
Because we're not in a patient room all the time. And so hygienists, it's, touch points. It's how the phone is answered and how the patient feels as though they can share something with one, like an administrator, to pass it on to the doctor and get a response, or how they're welcomed into the office. We all know, we've had experience with doctors' offices where, just I'm here. And that's not authentic. And that puts the patient in a lower level, and that we're grander because we're doctors. I mean, that's not what humans are looking for. You have to recognize some people are coming, they're terrified.
Right.
Okay. And they're looking for somebody who gets that and isn't going to scold them. We want to embrace their situation. I mean, sometimes there's some terrible situations, train wrecks, but a lot of times there's healthy patients that are just afraid, and guiding them, holding their hand. It's not just the doctor. So the emphasis of my previous partners that kind of created this brand and worked this long taught us and invested in the team, and the growth of that creates an ecosystem of relationships, and patients will stay with us for whatever relationship they built. And I'm very, very proud of that. I'm also proud of the location, and also, if you come to our office, it's impressive that when you first come to the office, you come up the elevator to the 8th floor, and you might expect that when the elevator opens, you're going to walk somewhere through a corridor, but the door is the elevator, and as soon as the elevator opens, we're right there.
Oh, you're just
And-
fully.
And then the windows are there, and it's beautiful. So that may not have a lot of humility, but as a potential associate back in 2010, that was a wow factor. And I walked in and I was greeted the way that we greet patients. and I felt special. And so that's what we're aiming for. Aiming for and delivering is, there are the
Well, you're doing.
successes and failures, but we're working it. We're massaging it. And I think that, like I said about the team, it's really about the culture and the relationship and all the stakeholders in a dental practice, including the patients and the community.
Absolutely. And you said something really interesting to me that, the founder of the office itself started out marketing in the 90s. This was before I think people really knew of marketing in dentistry. And I say it,
Yeah.
it was at a time where you weren't so pressured to market as you are today, right? So
Yeah.
having that experience, I mean, being in an office that started so before its time, honestly, at a time that many would think you didn't need to market at that point, but he did.
Yeah.
How has that worked out for you guys today?
Well, marketing has evolved significantly, I would say, in the last 5 years. So if we're doing internet marketing and social media, it doesn't have the same impact as relationship building does. But at the same time, it provides what I believe is a way for validation for a referral. Now, we definitely have our patients that see our SEO optimized, will pop up quickly because of how long the relationship has been with Google, and our website has a lot of content, a lot of, before and after pictures or just information. And I think that's something that we essentially acquired by joining the practice, but we continue to try to massage and provide patients with content. But I think it's really about the balance of the legacy of the practice, the patients that have been with the practice, and they still are with our practice. You do the math. It's 50 years, and some of them are 50-year patients, and that they also have families and children, and so those patients have stayed with the practice. What we find now is that we cannot just focus on one aspect of marketing. So it's been great. It's definitely a eye-catching. We can get the attention of patients with strong Google reviews, for example. But we recognize that there are multifaceted, many variables, and that marketing in and of itself has to be a united front and covering all the bases. So I would say that there was a time when more than 75% was internal marketing, and then there was an evolution to 50-50, and then there was an evolution to, say, 60 internet and 40% internal. And I think we're seeing a trend now, maybe even since the pandemic, that internal referrals are an area that, as we track, is seeming to be making a resurgence, reconnecting and reminding new team members about the value. That's something that is a challenge, is acquiring or developing new team members to the cultural shift that we have. Well, not necessarily a cultural shift, but adopting that concept and basically drinking the Kool-Aid of our practice and believing in themselves and their contribution and their impact to the practice. Because how we all have these touching points with patients, I recognize, and my partners recognize, that the great experiences are often very much valued, but the negative experiences are more sticky sometimes for people. So making sure that our team knows that somebody's always watching and paying attention to interactions with each other. And just like families, not everybody gets along. And that's okay. That's totally normal. But sometimes we have to put on that hat of essentially performance. We're on stage, and we have to put forth our best effort. And I think that um, that you asked a question about how the impact of like specifically digital marketing. It has its place, but it's not the only thing. And in fact, as I mature, or maybe dare I say gain some wisdom, we can't focus on the easy way. Um, it would be nice. I mean, frankly, like doing the path of least resistance is very attractive, but there's a mountain to climb, and to be successful,
Yes.
believe that we have to continue to be on there, and when we fall off, as quickly as we can, get back on and stay there as long as we can.
Like, it's almost ironic, that in the past we didn't have all the digital marketing tools, right? And so there was such an allure to it. So the first movers in that got all the attention, and then now that it's become such a standard, the values now place in the scarcity of that human connection. And so, well, just like
Yeah,
you're saying, marketing's not enough. And if you're so focused in what everyone else is doing, you don't stand out anymore. And your practice is obviously handling that very well. Um,
well,
you
thank you,
have a
thank you.
very large team. Would you be able to give some insight on, who's in your office and how it's running today? Like how you can manage such a big team and still keep that high level of, service to your patients?
Very good question. I ask myself the same on a daily basis, because work-life balance is such an important part. But how do we do it, logistically? Well, I have ex- spectacular partners, and their core values, we're completely different, yet we get along very well. And fortunately, our personalities happen to find the tasks that we know. And when the senior founding partner retired, he managed it out all himself. So differentiating and figuring out in the several years since took time, but we found our niche and what we're good at. And there's always another one of us that's secondary to that. So that's one thing, is having a management style that is democratic, because there's three of us, and making decisions as quickly as possible. It's a lot easier for one individual to make a decision. But we also have a team of key members that would represent their team: admin, lab. We have an on-site lab, and there's three laboratory technicians, so varying skills and what they do. And we have a team of hygienists, and there's a hygiene lead, and there's a team of assistants, and there's a lead. And we'll do weekly meetings and try to discuss what the priorities are. If we try to tackle all the priorities, and this is something that I'm actually basically speaking on one of my partner's behalf right now. His idea was, frankly, that we can't do all the things all at once. And in order to move the direction of the vision, maintain a culture, and grow relationships, the priorities have to be established and then worked on until decisions are made, until we see that system working. A lot of what we work on is developing systems and trying not to get into a situation where something wasn't addressed or we're not paying attention to something. So how do we do that day to day? We have partners meetings. We have bi-monthly team meetings, and then weekly, call them lead meetings, that will address all of these concerns.
Wow.
Yeah. So on a day-to-day basis, sometimes we are working in the practice. We're being dentists. If there's free time during the day, if the schedule is lighter, there are opportunities for discussions, but we have to take time to have those tough conversations and recognize what's happening and try to solve that issue completely so we can move on to the next task. But there are always more and more and more. So it is essentially trying to find our way through those challenges and have some collective or a collective decision that we all can agree on and pass on to the team and hope we can get their buy-in. And that's what team meetings will be.
It's so funny because you said it's like a democracy out there. I feel like being in DC, it's made your office legislative.
That's an interesting point I hadn't considered, but certainly that the subconsciousness of that is very clearly connecting it. Yeah.
But it works, right? It works.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, you've obviously had a lot of experiences in your career and from different points of view. Are there a couple things that maybe you've learned the hard way that you can share with the audience, with the listeners, that they can learn from?
Oh, sure. How much time do we have? Well, as anybody, I think, who is at least trying to, and gosh, I don't want to exclude anybody. Growth mindset is something that's a concept, right? So I think we're all kind of fixed in the way we were raised or the way we are, our upbringing or the challenges that we've had. Acknowledging that we're not at the center of our own universe and that we're the only, we're part of a collective group of people. So the challenges are when I have gotten stuck in my own mindset that I didn't believe a method or I thought my way was the right way. And learning now to be more open and have a growth mindset is helping me to see perspectives of other individuals to grow from it. Relationships with partners, partners that are no longer with us for various reasons. That, for example, one passing. Learning that there are times when the practice really needs a lot of emphasis from the whole collective team to step up to make up for the needs of the patient. If we don't have opportunities or time in the schedule for a patient, we have to find a way to see them. And that's part of the legacy is if you have an emergency, we're going to see you. And that isn't always great on a Friday afternoon for the team, but there are too many practices out there that have a certain level of convenience for themselves. And that has an impact over time on individuals who think they can count on us. And so making sure that we have our team as a whole, when some blips happen in practitioners' availability, that's one challenge. Learning from that is just saying, hey, we need to step up. We need to work together. There needs to be some level of leadership. Otherwise, the sentiment can shift in the team. The culture of the team can shift. So learning that the hard way is expecting something like that not to happen. You have expectations for life, for success. I've done all these things. Don't I deserve this? Well, no, absolutely not. The pandemic.
Yeah.
I think how we navigated that has a lot to do with my managing partner before he retired. Instead of, a lot of us were like, wow, what are we going to do? We have a team. We have no patients. We have a lot of accounts receivable. We have bills to pay. What do we do with our team? And a lot of practitioners in Washington let their team go, furloughed, laid off. And we did not do that. And it was terrifying for those 12 weeks to do that and to continue to ask. Fortunately, we had a great relationship with our bank and they kept helping us. And what was wonderful is to continue to engage them on Zoom. We all talked about what we were going to do, how we were going to plan on keeping our teams safe, making sure our patients felt safe when we returned from the pandemic, connecting with them, making calls, checking in with those patients that we know have conditions that didn't get addressed because they may not be emergency, but they were urgent, and we don't want them to feel alone or that they're on their own. So our team would contact patients directly and check in and assess whether they needed to be seen. So when we were allowed to see patients for emergencies, we'd each pick a day and a certain period of time, and whoever needed to get in, we'd see them. It was scary in the beginning, but then it became routine to have a place to go once or twice a week. That was different than staying at home. I felt grateful 12 weeks after a pandemic hit to actually be able to go back to work. And the patients were grateful. And it strangely changed our outlook on our practice and, possibly the ebbs and flows of burnout that come. There was a renewed value in our team and a place of comfort where we're all unified in doing something that those that have to stay home and don't have critical careers like healthcare practitioners, especially doctors and emergency people, my golly, completely essential. We had that essential of making sure our patients were safe or okay, or that they're temporary, that was coming off, that was exposing an uncomfortable tooth, and it was really, really cold when they had something to drink, that we could make them feel comfortable, because being stuck at home, we all know, was one of the most awful experiences of humanity.
And just
So, hitting adversity with seeing it as a big thunderstorm cloud. And I love this, that I'm borrowing this, but I love the concept of the difference between possibly a cow and a bull, and that the cow may recede and avoid and avoid and avoid, but eventually they're going to be overcome by the storm. But the bison, I said bull, but the bison may run just straight directly ahead. And on the other side is the pasture and the green grass and the blue sky. And challenging our mindset and having that growth to say, and to recognize that within yourself, I think is a challenge. Sometimes we are just in a negative thought or negative feedback loop. To look at that and say, okay, here's the challenge. There's something better if we go through it. On the other side, it's going to be better. And then having those surrounding you embrace that concept. And the reinforcement that gives, for example, me or whatever partner or whatever team member came up with that. We're not, just because we're the leadership doesn't mean that we didn't have a good idea, right? So coming out of that and challenging the specific drawback or the specific difficulty and reframing as soon as possible and saying, okay, this is not going away, so let's solve it. And this kind of ties into how do we solve the day-to-day as a group of leaders. We have to have input from our whole team, and that's where the leadership team will get information from the whole team, and then bring it to us, and we'll prioritize and try to figure out how we get forward from there.
Absolutely. Completely agree. And you said there's one common factor. I've been interviewing a few DSC clinics now, and I'm noticing a very common trend among how each one of you have reacted to the time of COVID. And the thing that is consistent is having that bison run through it, that whole mentality of like
Yeah.
the clear skies and see a different side of things, which is such a challenge for most people. When you're in it and you're going through it, it's so challenging to pull yourself out and say, everything's going to be okay.
Yeah.
And I know you're very active in your personal life. Can you share, some of the outlets that you have in life that have helped you to maintain this kind of mindset?
I think the mindset that I have is something that I'm always aspiring to be. That I and just being as vulnerable as I can for you. It's not always there. It's a challenge to wake up sometimes and recognize the day or what's impending or causing stress. Um, so the things that I try to do is exercise. Um, I have family history of some concerns. I'm not sure of any people that exist anymore don't have family history, but I like looking at the future and making sure that I can maintain a certain level of strength and endurance so that when I get older, age is not the factor. So, aging is not a factor with the chronological aging because we see people who are in their 70s, 80s, and 90s who are still very active and they have a better quality of life and they live longer. So I think that also works very well because when I work out or I exercise or I run, that's the part where I'm competitive against myself. And I can push myself through that if I can get myself to do that every morning. And sometimes I can't. But when I do, I've never looked back and say, oh, I wish I didn't do that. So I try to show up for myself. I try to put that step forward. Um, you know, treating sleep breathing disorders like sleep apnea, I am a shark for sleep quality. I'm a shark for my own personal, my family's. To others, not everybody wants the invitation to be reminded of when to go to sleep in my family, children especially. But it's important because when you have good sleep and you're active and you get your body working, you've got your medicine and you're better for those that are around you. And that's a big thing for me. Riding my bike to work through the pandemic was something I picked up. Carpools in life had changed. So riding 15 miles there and back on a canal, which is just picturesque and beautiful. We're right on the C&O Canal, Washington, D.C. And so I can take a direct shot downtown, park my bike, and go to work. Is a wonderful way to show up to work and be ready. And my team would recognize it. So when I can't do that now, I meditate. I really actually got into not just mindfulness, but I pay attention in a particular way, and I close my eyes and I breathe, and I do some guided meditation. Um, and I try to take that to these moments, like even just having a conversation with a patient, being more aware of the environment and being present and being there where I am. Those are parts of how to stay out of your own insecurities and remind yourself that the people that we're engaging with are also looking to engage, and keeping that social connection sometimes is about avoiding those insecurities. So I like to work out. I do enjoy it, but it's very helpful and I know it's going to help me live longer. I think sleep is what probably equal. And the third is diet. Now with teenagers, it's a challenge. Our pantry is filled with lots of treats. So that's the one that I'm kind of a bit on a hiatus. I'm eating well, but not the way that I would like to. So hopefully
The holidays.
so I'll yeah. Yes. Um, I think longevity is also a big focus from more recent data information collectively podcasts. Everybody's interviewing something that's contributory to moving a society in a possibly better direction. And because of that, it becomes something that more individuals embrace, and the tribe that believes in those things and recognizing that medicine is within our lifestyle rather than in a pill or a shot or a surgeon's approach to treatment. The more we focus on those pillars of health, including oral health and also the body's health and how it affects the mouth, it's very easy to have a discussion with patients now because they've heard of that podcast that I listened to, or they've heard of the book that I've read. And I'm more able to connect with patients about dentistry by just talking about my values for health and how I want to help, if they'll allow me to at least give them some suggestions, or in certain cases, coach them, or connect with them about a discussion of an interesting topic, because it's more fun or it's more fulfilling to recognize that it's not simply like, brush your teeth and floss. You know, how should we do that? What's the technique? One of the interesting methods that I have with patients is to suggest, if we're getting into just oral health now, is not so much telling them you need to floss every day. How about changing the behavior of where you floss and what tools you use, and maybe not doing it in the restaurant, in the bathroom, before you go to bed when you're exhausted, or in the morning when you're rushing out the door. Where do you spend a lot of time, and where can you just reach for a tool and then clean up afterwards in a restroom? And it can be, in this day and age, a lot of people are at home, or they're in offices with not a lot of folks. And if they value the coaching, they come back and they're grateful. They say, I don't bleeding gums anymore, or I'm so grateful that I don't have tooth decay anymore. So the methods of maintaining health, or maintaining my mindset, or trying to do the right thing when no one else is looking, I try to incorporate into who I am and share with those who want to hear it. And there are those that aren't ready for it or just don't want to. And I try to read the room and recognize that they're just not ready to hear what I have to say. And that's okay.
That's
Maybe someday.
always going to be a challenge to help those that don't want help, right? But
Yeah.
with that, and having such a big office, and so many people, that you're responsible for, you touched on this already, but I want to bring it up because it is, I think, a very strong topic in dentistry right now, is the feelings of burnout. Um, you know,
So
I would assume that at some point maybe you felt this yourself, having so much on your belt, and you're so young too. You've got a lot of responsibilities. You've got
thank you.
a great mindset to keep yourself active, and know what grounds you. How do you prevent yourself from going down that path, and how can you help others in that?
To prevent burnout is a challenge, because you can have burnout that happens for months, and you can have burnout that happens for a couple of hours, right? And so sometimes it's the emotions that are developing within that I may not recognize, that I'm getting some type of feedback from another individual, and it may be my tone or how I'm speaking to somebody because I'm under stress, and that fight or flight response of the stressful situation maybe cause me anxiety and fear, and so I'm maybe shorter or more dismissive. So preventing burnout in those moments is just like, okay, what is it? What is it that happened, and trying to move on from it, or did I work out that morning? Try to correlate it. There was a great TED Talk years ago where this particular CEO, she ran every day, rain or shine, for 2 miles before work for everybody else that she interacted with, because she knew that. So looking back at where was I, and what state of mind was I when I'm feeling that burned out situation? And then there are times when things are in a lull or not going the way we expect, or way I expected. And I have a lot of expectations. I think that I'm a ruminator, and I think about the situation, and I can get stuck there for longer than most. And I don't know, because I have no one to compare myself but to me. And of course, like I said earlier, center of my own universe, is to look at what day in and day out is, to borrow from David Foster Wallace's commencement speech, which is an amazing one to YouTube, is to recognize that we're all affected by this. We all have an ego. We all have a dark side. We all have, insecurities, and to somehow, borrowing again from coaching and therapists that I've had, is recognizing that in this moment I am okay, and nothing that's happened is so tragic in most cases that we can't move forward. So burnout happens, for me, I think when I lose sight. When I lose sight and I'm in those situations and I start recognizing, okay, oh, this happened, and then this happened, and then this happened. And it just beats the emotion, it beats the strength that was within you. And you get more and more punched. But then something shifts, embracing that, and then recognizing the next positive and the next positive. So looking in the moment, and then starting to pay attention to the good that's there, and be present, and not worry so much about what happened or what could happen. When I believe that when we get into these moments, and I'm told by many people that I listen to, that when we stay focused on the objective, we can maintain composure and prevent the burnout. I think it's definitely being prepared every day, which is a challenge in itself, but trying to be prepared mentally, physically, and then recognizing when something doesn't go your way, that doesn't go my way, that I may have an opportunity either to learn from it, or I'm past it, I'm out of it. And as soon as I recognize that, I'm okay again. So
Right.
making it happen fast. Burnout is something that everybody experiences in my profession. Dentistry has a significant reputation for stress, and we connect with patients, and sometimes their energy is passed on to us. And recognizing that they're not doing that necessarily to harm us. If they're having a bad visit, or they're having a bad day and they're taking it on us, just recognizing that we don't have to embrace that. We just do our thing, and give them the customer service that they need. And then that individual is no longer there for their visit. And then everybody else from there can give us some positive experience communicating with the patient and learning about them. And they share their weekend or their summer plans, or the accolades of so-and-so getting into college. A new narrative is formed. You follow that trend, have a good mindset, and you get out of that burnout situation. Okay. But it's not an easy thing. It really
No,
isn't. And
not.
I acknowledge that. And I'm glad that I know that now. I didn't know that 20 years ago. When you have that like image of the future, but the realistic image that I have now of the future is continuing to follow these ideals, learn from mistakes, and grow to the best that I can, and put my best foot forward. And if I can succeed in doing that as often as I can, I'll be better off.
Yeah.
I think it sounds good anyway.
I believe it as well. I have one more final question for you. This question comes from the previous guest. And so I'm going to ask the same for Mio. As soon as you answer, I'm going to ask what question you'd like to ask the next person. It's kind of a little fun game we're playing. So
Okay.
the final question, this person wants to know, when you decided to become a DSC clinic, did you do this because you felt this was the time to certify and show where, like, you're worthy at this moment, so let's certify it, make it official? Or did you become a DSC clinic because you felt it would elevate you to another level?
That's a great question, because sometimes humility is a tricky thing. I think what we did in dentistry was certainly above what I had aspired to do. The standard of care and the quality of the before and afters that we had in an analog world were significant, but so challenging. And sometimes we look back at a case and they look great, and you had this great outcome. But now that we have this digitization aspect, I realized what not seeing an architectural plan ahead of time has done, or not seeing that, we left opportunities behind in improving this and that. I embraced DSD after feeling burned out. You want to talk about burnout?
Okay.
And we were really in that time of pandemic. And it was just before, actually, that I may have connected with you. And recognizing, just listening to Christian talk. And he said to me, and I felt like it was me, of course, right? He's saying it to a group of an audience, right? But that connection that, we're always a beginner. It doesn't matter how, and my partner would say, you can do the same thing 20 years in a row and call yourself 20 years experience, or you can grow. And that, two great mentors
Right.
had come together and independently merged that concept with me. And I recognized how it could, DSD and digital dentistry, can elevate younger and newer practitioners to become better simply if you have good skills. The art is also there as well. And if you have the right ethics, you can connect with patients and show them what things would look like if they made this investment in themselves. So that's what brought me to DSD, was essentially the mindset. It's different because there's lots of digitization out there. It's not uncommon for labs to come, but do they get the concept of connecting and developing relationships and connecting with patients on an emotional level? That's very sticky. It was very easy for me to embrace that based on this entire conversation. You can hear it all laced through. And then I brought it to my team and my partners. And we talked about how we could do this. And you mentioned how we have a very large office. And we were very much accustomed to closing the practice and at least monthly having some type of long continuing education or meeting, or shutting down the office for a day or two and bringing the educator to our location. And that existed as a concept before I joined the practice. Bring the best to us, teach the whole team, not just the doctors. With CE, everybody knows your doctor goes Monday morning, they want to make these changes, and the team says, don't worry, they'll forget about it by Friday, right? But by engaging the team, and as most people know, if they don't, they should find out. Christian is contagious. So we didn't know anybody else with DSD, and he's the face and the CEO and the founder. So I connected, I think, with you.
Yeah.
And I said, how do we get Christian to Washington, D.C.?
And I was like, who do you think you are? It stood out like crazy that, and I want to compliment you on that, because most people going through implementations will say, oh, I'll take whatever I can get. But you really took the bull by the horns and you were like, no, we want the person, and we want them to come here. And you didn't care what it took. And you developed this from scratch, because we didn't offer, Christian travel speaks around the world. So to do a private training for an office was something we were like, what's going, I had so many people asking me like, who is Michael Katsaros and what's going on here? And I'm like, don't worry, we're figuring it out. But we figured it out. And so I wanted to.
We did. Yeah, we did. And it was kind of the legacy of the practice to do stuff like that. How do you stand out? You have a trained team, not a dentist who's teaching everybody else. We're not educators. We don't have a curriculum. You can't teach team members chairside. And, there's only so many days in the week, and you have to balance life. So the best way to impact and change our practice instantaneously was doing something like that. And we were accustomed to it. And this was a collective idea that I kind of bought into the concept, literally, and immensely. I bought into when I met my partner, and that concept just took us to the next level. And, bringing DSD to Washington, D.C. was, the biggest one that we did. Okay. I'm not saying that's something that we invest in significantly then, but that concept was that valuable that we had all the tools. We had the digital dentist. We had all the iTero scanners. I think at that time we had 4 or 5 scanners in the office. We had 2 printers, a miller. We have a computer designer. But it was the systems and putting it all together and trying to stay away from that stone model and the ditching of the stone and carving. And how do we implement this? And then recognizing that there are only certain things that we are capable of doing in lab. And basically, not necessarily repurposing, but our lab has evolved more digitally, but we know what we're going to do with what labs and the DSD lab based on everybody understanding the concept behind it. And so that was an immediate change in the burnout. It was an injection. It had impact, to use a word, that exists right now in every case. We changed the model of all patients that come in for smart consultations and even orthodontics, like an Invisalign consult. We're going to talk about the objective and what their facial smile relationship is a lot easier and faster by showing them before and after and helping them believe that this concept is good for them as well, because it's good for because the outcome is predictable, precise, less destructive, more ideal, and you can simulate that and then copy and paste it from beginning to end. And then the end photos are better, but they're not that far off from the beginning trying. And it's exciting, and it eliminates burnout.
Absolutely. Is it fair for me to say that maybe initially you were attracted to DSD because you felt like, we're there already, we have the scatters and the equipments and everything, the team and all of it. But as you got into it more, would it be fair to say that eventually it became, the recognition that DSD did help elevate you in certain regards?
Sure. Absolutely. It's a collective community.
Right.
And those that have embraced it, you recognize that there's a similarity that you share. And there's it's collaborative. It's not competitive.
Yeah.
And dentistry can be very competitive. We should be more collaborative. So that shift mindset helps to recognize that the other DSD clinics that we're working with are doing similar things and they want to do the right thing. And the authenticity just goes right up. Everybody embraces the concept and it feels good. It feels good.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Michael. This is wonderful hearing from you. We don't get to talk so personal all the time, right? When we're in the grind. And so this has been wonderful to hear your story, to have you share what works for you and what has worked for you in the past. I just want to say thank you for your time today. And
It's such an honor. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.